I think oftentimes we feel like we're doing so much to try to stay healthy, and we're like, why is it still not working? Why do I still feel burnt out? And the to-do list never goes away. There's always the to-do list. There's always new challenges, whether it's parenting, partnering, building a business, working.
Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie Groeschl, registered dietitian and mom of three. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to Wellness That Fits. Today, I'm so excited to talk to Jodi Scott. She is the co-founder of Green Goo, a plant-based first aid and herbal wellness company inspired by traditional herbalism and motherhood. What began as a homemade salve for her family grew into a nationally trusted brand used by millions. Jodi speaks openly about building a mission-driven business, which I love, navigating burnout, and returning to what truly grounds us, nature, simplicity, and care. She believes plant medicine is both ancient wisdom and modern necessity. So, Jodi, thank you so much for being on and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, before we get into some questions on motherhood, burnout, and just building a business, I was hoping you could share a little bit about your story behind Green Goo, maybe like what first drew you to medicinal plants in the first place.
Yeah. So my sister's an herbalist and a midwife, and I was pre-med, got my master's in health psychology, was specializing in psychoneuroimmunology and training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model. So what does that mean? Essentially, I wanted to change medicine. I felt very passionate about improving our healthcare system. And specifically, the biopsychosocial model was helping the physicians rather than just simply prescribe to lean in more and get more data points, more information so that they could potentially move the solution forward, provide other potential solutions to help that medication and the outcome that they were looking for. And then we were always really passionate as a family in healthy living. We were athletes and learned at a very young age how food was fuel and that taking care of yourself meant more optimal performance. Now, Green Goo itself, I'll share, was sort of a very interesting aha moment. I was pregnant and I got a cut and I went into my first aid cabinet and I looked at the ingredients before putting it on because I was like, I haven't looked at these ingredients in a really long time. And I was like, whoa, here I'm living a very healthy life, but I'm making this exception. Why? So I went back to my sister who was just starting to make different kinds of medicines from plants. And I shared that with her. And I was like, why do we think that this is the only solution to get done? And what we found is we weren't alone. The natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told these chemical laden solutions were the only solutions to get the job done. And then what I found that was even more interesting was that chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high. And how we approach first aid is if it doesn't sting, burn, or dry it out, it must not be working. And so the conventional consumer was like, I just want something that works better because going to my doctor's inconvenient and I've got a chronic skin condition. And so my sister and I, that's when we were like, let's put our heads together with my Western medicine background and her plant medicine, and let's see if we can make plant-based solutions that are superior in efficacy. So they're great for everyone. And oh, by the way, also clean ingredients. So that's how
Yeah.
Green Goo was born.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that story. And it's so interesting because I do feel like that time when you get pregnant is a time where obviously you're really looking over everything and looking over every single label and ingredient list, and it's a lot, and you're just trying to obviously care for yourself, but also when there's somebody else involved in this new little tiny thing that you're growing in your belly. I think it's just another cause and reason for a lot of women to change their health and change their ways. And so yeah, I shared with you via email that one of my, I don't know if it's an attainable goal, but one of my fun goals is to be like to follow a shaman in the Amazon rainforest or something because I love herbalists. I love the idea of what plants can do for us because I truly believe food is medicine, plants are medicine. And I mean, in a real aspect too. I mean, we have developed a lot of our medications and things from plants based on how plants are chemically structured and things. So I love this idea. I love talking plant medicine. So again, yeah, I'm just curious. So you explained your background with training and teaching like med students. And so you hadn't become a mother yet. And so it was more so like the motherhood that had triggered this growth of the business, correct?
It was, yeah. Being pregnant where I
Okay.
was like, "I'm not gonna put this on myself or my daughter."
Yeah, yeah.
My soon to be daughter. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It was very
So
eye-opening.
yeah, so how long did it I'm just curious, like, how long did it take you guys to get this up and running and testing and all of that fun stuff that goes into creating a new product?
My goodness. So we started making the products. We were growing the herbs in our backyard and we were drying the herbs on old screen doors on our front porch. And our kitchen was our production facility. And we were selling it at the farmer's market. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of botanical research outside of just some legacy books. And so taking my sister's wisdom and then for me thinking the physiology that I understood, which I thought was really interesting. Like if you have a blister on your foot and you have a cold sore, your body does a very similar reaction. So perhaps when we select the herbs that we pick, we look at how not only those herbs works by themselves, but how they work with each other and how they work with the body. And so the farmer's market was really much our like call it our research lab and putting the herbs together and seeing like, are we going to get the results that we hope for? And it far exceeded our expectations. Suddenly, we had the longest line at the farmer's market. Parents are showing us, like my son who had eczema was embarrassed to go to school. Now he's happy, he's comfortable. People who had chronic pain and different injuries were like, I'm out enjoying my activities again. People would lift up their shirts and, like, hey, I've got this giant gash that I got 18 stitches on and I was out mountain biking, and usually I just put dirt in it when I get a cut, but now I have Green Goo with me, so my physician's much happier with me. It was just so funny, and it got so busy that we had to take our camping equipment and build an outdoor kitchen for our food to cook because our production facility and our kitchen was so busy. Um,
Oh my gosh, it's wild. Just roughing it outside, right? Like, getting the full nature experience.
Full on. It was wild. And then from there, it was like retailers started reaching out to us, and we didn't know what that meant. We didn't, they're like, hey, do you have UPCs? Don't know, but okay, I guess we'll get those. And so a lot of it was learning on the go. And thankfully my family is just so lovely in terms of, "Hey, you know what? It's an obstacle. It's not. We'll figure out the solution." And I'll never forget, it was I didn't know this, but I got an opportunity to go to the military exchange to present. And I'm sitting in the waiting room, and someone that was there was like, "You know, this is the second largest retailer in the world." I'm like, "I did not need to know that." And I go into the meeting and they're like, "Okay, we need do you have EDI? Do you work with SPS? So we need a spec sheet." And I walk out and I'm like, "Mom, I think we got the deal. I have no idea what we signed up for, but we'll figure it out." And and I think that also started the stage of fight or flight, right? Because you're constantly in go mode. You're constantly trying to learn your way through this. The next was manufacturing. We knew that we needed to protect the process. And we don't fit a typical manufacturing model. And we also the fact that we're protecting the plant integrity is why these products work. And it was someone who came to our booth and his son had eczema and he used our product and just happened to be that we were thinking we're never gonna be able to scale this because 'cause we're never gonna be able to find a way to manufacture. He called us and he's like, "Look, I'm in a completely different line of business in manufacturing, but the world needs these products because this is the only solution that has worked for my son who has eczema." So he helped us build a dedicated line with a dedicated team, with a dedicated process so that we could scale and protect the integrity of the plants in these formulas. So it was a lot of that and a lot of educating. No one knew what plant-based was then. I remember going to my first national pharmacy buyer and I'm like, "I've got a plant-based first aid." And he just about fell out of his chair. He's like, "Those 2 words don't go together."
And what year was that? I'm just curious.
That was around 2016.
Okay. I can't imagine the journey that you guys have taken to get here because I think creating a product that works is one thing, but then, like you said, scaling it and getting those right manufacturing practices in place just sounds like a formula for overwhelm. But yeah, I guess, I don't, I do want to get into like the specific products that you're using because it's so interesting to me and the plant compounds. But before we get into that, since we're on the topic of like overwhelm and building a successful business, I mean, clearly you've built a successful business and it's rooted in wellness, but burnout can still happen. So, have you gone through seasons of burnout and what did that look like for you? And maybe like, how did you pull yourself out of it or any strategies that you've used to stay grounded in wellness?
It's so interesting you should ask that because I think oftentimes we feel like we're doing so much to try to stay healthy and we're like, "Why is it still not working? Why do I still feel burnt out?" And the to-do list never goes away. There's always the to-do list. There's always new challenges, whether it's parenting, partnering, building a business, working. And I was exercising, I was eating healthy foods, I was mindful of my sleep, and I was still go, go, go. And it really took an individual who brought my awareness to spending more time on presence and more presence exercises. And when he first presented this to me, I was like, I, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to sit for 2 hours and do meditation. I have work to do. And he reframed it for me in a different way where he said, you don't need 2 hours. The science supports that micro moments compound, so 30 seconds to 2 minutes throughout the day. And you have those times, Jody, the 30 seconds to 2 minutes when you go to pick up your daughter from school instead of scrolling. I want you to look at the clouds. I want you to hear the birds. I want you to go outside, go take a quick walk, even if it's just taking a walk around the block for a few minutes, feeling your feet on the ground and being really present. Don't take anything in, focus on your 5 senses. And I never really thought about it from that way. Said, focus on just hearing, just listening, just touching, one of those things for a very intentional 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And when I started doing that, all of a sudden I could feel like and you will feel the cortisol drop. And there's a whole process that happens after that. When your cortisol drops, your inflammation drops, your serotonin gets better, you sleep better, then you're contributing to a more positive cycle. And when you're in burnout phase, it's so interesting how different it is because you're like grinding and you're go, 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 go. And what happens is your body's really tired, but your mind is still racing. And so it's like they're not connected in a way that they're complementing each other. And when you do these presence exercises, it shifts. And then all of a sudden your mind is calmer and your body has more energy. And so that was a big shift for me in how I manage burnout now.
Yeah, I am so glad you shared that story because I actually work with a lot of high achieving women who they do reach burnout because it's success, success. Their whole life is based around achievements, and you get to a point where you can only do so much, and to bring back that presence is really hard because so for me, I'm a dietitian, and when somebody comes to work with me, they're thinking, okay, we're going to do a lot of nutrition. Like, what do I eat? Just like tell me what to eat and, optimize me that way. And of course, that's part of the strategy. But it's also like getting them to change their mindset around how they're prioritizing themselves and how they're prioritizing their time. Like, no matter what you eat, if you're not prioritizing a little presence time or regulating your nervous system, or, like those micro moments you mentioned, even if it's some small box breathing before you eat, or getting yourself out of that quote unquote fight or flight response and getting yourself into the rest and digest. Like all of those little things really do add up. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a nutrition thing. It's more of the nervous system regulation. However, it really impacts your gut and it impacts that gut brain axis. And so I absolutely think it's important to take time to slow down, to be more present. And so I love the examples that you gave. Just, it sounds woo woo, especially the super like high achieving women who are go, go, go. And they're like, no, I need to utilize every minute of my time. This for myself as well. I have to remind myself to do this. But I think it's really important to, like you said, like you notice what's around you. You go outside and take a walk and notice nature and smell and use all your senses. So I love that you give us those concrete examples. So I guess, do you have any examples of specifically maybe s- warning signs that your body was giving you that you feel like maybe you ignored at first, that you were starting to burn out or become overwhelmed?
I think some of the more traditional that you push through, meaning your sleep gets disrupted, you have inflammation, your mind is racing, but you're still really tired. You don't feel like, and I do think that when you're in that state, you have a way of filling your day with busy stuff, like busy, you feel like success is doing. And
Mhm.
I challenge, and I really appreciate that you talk about high achieving women because we are the doers. That is what we do.
Mhm.
And there's this interesting dovetail that happens when you're in a more of a state of presence while you're doing. So you can still do, but you're like being first. And it's
Mhm.
hard to explain. And I'll say, when I was brought to this exercise to integrate, yes, I had to dedicate more time in the initial phases because he was like, "This is like working out at the gym. The same way you work out your body, you work out your mental fitness. But this mental fitness I'm going to introduce you to, you're going to do differently than you have before, which is you're going to spend more time with your senses because I mean, if you think about it, like our skin is born from the same tissue, embryonic tissue as our nervous system. It's rich in neurotransmitters. So when you do things like touch and you're more in tune with that, just like what you described, you're in that rest and digest. Your cortisol drops, your inflammation goes down. Your systems are all connected. Your endocrine system is happy. And so when you can have these little nervous system regulators and you invest in it later, once you've figured out what that feels like, I say like, when you go on vacation, you're like, gosh, this feels so good. I want to feel like this all the time. I'm like, be a tourist in your own home. Go on vacation in your body all the time. You don't have like it's very important to have those longer we'll call 'em meditation moments, those vacations for real. But when you practice it throughout the day, you can still get all the things done that you want to do. And I would even argue even more. But because you take those micro moments to invest, it's like you, the amount of stress we put our bodies through with that increased cortisol, the increased inflammation, the lack of sleep that's a part of that vicious cycle, it does more harm than good. And you're trying to like combat that. And so the fact that you can have a little bit more influence on it. And so again, instead of scrolling on the phone when you're sitting there to pick up your kiddo or having that next phone call, just take 30 seconds and like get in your body, feel those senses, and you will feel that shift. And then it's like your body can go the distance. I work more now than I did before when I was in a state of fight or flight. And I'm like far healthier and giving like far greater output.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always say too, health and your wellness is a business strategy. Like if you are a businesswoman, you need to have, just like you would for marketing and you would for sales, like you need to have a strategy for wellness and how you're going to show up every day. what specifically do those micro breaks look like? Whether it is doing a quick 10 squats if you're sitting at your computer doing client calls or podcast guesting, is it 10, 15 squats between calls? Is it take a moment, literally, like you said, if you have 5 minutes, ask yourself, am I hungry right now? Just being in tune with your body and having some of that interoceptive awareness is so important. And like you said, like too, they're micro moments and they're ways that we can train our brain to rewire to notice those things more often instead of just, buzzing past it and constantly thinking of the next thing, to be present and to realize and create awareness around that, to train then our brain for the next moments and the next day when we're experiencing the same things and we get a choice. We get a choice. Do we I'm going to use it, do we do 10 squats again or do we scroll? And so I think getting that dopamine hit from exercise or from doing something good for your body starts to rewire your brain towards those more positive health experiences. So you give some really good examples. Thank you for sharing those.
I just want to just underscore, I love how you talked about that your wellness strategy is just as important as all of these other strategies that you're implementing. So thank you. That's just wonderful.
Honestly, it's like eh, women in business can do so many things. We have a different skill set, than men. And I think women in business is my passion because again, we can impact so many people. And so if I can help women become more well and reduce that overwhelm and again, that interoceptive awareness or understand when you're hungry, when you're full. What does dysregulated cortisol feel like? And you had said, so one of the burnout symptoms is like, you're like that inflammation in my body. Now, I think you said it that way because you are really well versed in that. Whereas I think a lot of women might not say, well, I've just felt inflammation, right? However, if you're a woman who doesn't quite have that biological background, maybe you might be thinking, I'm experiencing a lot more body aches or brain fog is a huge one because there's so much inflammation, neuroinflammation in your brain, also in your body, that's more body aches, but you can't think as well. You can't recall the words. You can't, your executive functioning might be going down. And so when you can recognize some of those symptoms, and maybe we don't all know, like women don't maybe know that it is involved with inflammation, but I think it's important to recognize some of those other signs and symptoms to know, like, okay, my body is overwhelmed. I need some help here. So, yeah, excellent examples. And yeah, I love that you share your story because I think it is so common. Just so many women are trying so hard. We work so hard. And I think it's shifting, but I do feel like there's that hustle and grind culture that makes a lot of women just, go for it. Burn the candle on both ends. And I'm not going to lie, I've definitely done this myself. And it's more of like I need to learn how to recover from that. But I think we can go farther. We can impact more people. We can impact our communities more when we are our best selves. And the way we can do that is by regulating our nervous system, using, plants and getting out in nature and fueling our bodies properly. And you're just a really good example of that. So thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you. I'm drinking it all up. I love everything you just said.
So, okay, I am so excited to get into your products because I was looking at them online. And if you want to just explain some of the plants that you use, maybe any the compounds that are actually creating a difference in the skin and like how that's working, like I'd love to hear about that from you.
Absolutely. So, two things. I do want to highlight the value of avoiding the ingredients too. So, not only at Green Goo are we going to give you nutritional skincare and the plants that are going to stimulate and emulate your body and remove friction, but we're also eliminating the parabens, the phthalates, the forever chemicals that are causing friction and contributing to your burnout. Because when you absorb these endocrine disruptors, they stimulate your body to produce cortisol, to increase inflammation, and do the things that burnout does in terms of creating that brain fog, impacting your sleep. And so I really like to encourage, if anything, the subtraction, the avoidance of those ingredients, and then invite these beautiful plants. So calendula is probably our most favorite plant. It's in most of our products. The FDA recognizes it as an astringent, so often used in wound care. It's wonderful antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties. The thing that I love the most about calendula is its skin repair element. And more recently, a study came out that calendula, when absorbed through the skin, actually stimulates the enzyme that regenerates your telomeres, which is so cool. And I think it also brings to light like what we know, which is when you see healthy skin, you know someone is healthy. At least that's part of why we like to buy and invest in these things. And so the fact that we now have some really good data around what these plants are doing in the various epidermal layers and then how that systemically responds in our system, super cool. I love putting calendula with plantain and yarrow. These three are key in our first aid solution. So these help bring oxygen to the wound site, help reduce the inflammation, take the sting out, while also providing an accelerated wound care component to it. So, our first aid solution was first designed to be just a traditional topical antiseptic. And in that spirit of, there's also great joy of cleaning out your first aid cabinet and not having all this one time use chemical products. I mean, think about it. You open up your cabinet, you're like, ugh, this is so bad. So our first aid solution is your first aid kit in one little tin. So cuts and scrapes, bug bites, bee stings, poison ivy, chafing, ingrown toenails, sunburns, inflammation. It is really your Swiss Army knife. And there are 13 herbs in there from chickweed to yarrow, plantain, sage. Um, all the goodness, and again, that whole plant and protecting the plant properties and having how these plants work together again, is just so special in terms of emulating your body. And then plant-based oils are really important because you want that semi-permeable membrane. A lot of what people are using, especially in first aid and in skincare in general, they're gonna be a petroleum or paraffin, base, and what happens is your skin is this breathable organ. It needs to be able to breathe. So it's suffocating the skin, which then also kills your microbiome. And your microbiome is a living organism that is very much connected to the rest of your system. And when your microbiome is compromised, that stimulates your endocrine system to say, hey, I'm in fight or flight, which then starts the inflammation, which then starts the cortisol. So I always like to invite that when you do engage in your skincare in this way, it is a contribution to high performance. It is a contribution to eliminating burnout. It is a contribution to getting you present because it helps with that mental clarity. And then with that mental clarity comes that moment, like you said, where when you have that 30 seconds, you're like, I'm so present and in my body, I'm going to do squats instead because you're going to do the thing that serves you. And it all contributes to that. And then we have another, helichrysum and blue yarrow and rose are some of my favorite anti-agings. These are wonderful because they penetrate the skin, high in vitamin C and antioxidants, help with elasticity and collagen development. And those are just fun because they give you one, they give you the visible signs, but then they're also really great for healing your skin from sun damage and scarring. And like giving it that longevity that you're looking for from a elasticity and health standpoint.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. And for listeners who might not be as scientific, I just wanted to mention so you had said that calendula can help shorten telomeres. So, for those who don't know, telomeres are like the ends of our DNA. And naturally, as we age, they just get shorter. But other things can speed this up, like inflammation, and just like you had mentioned, using some of these other products that are endocrine disruptors and, putting our body through the ringer, really. It's not just aging. And so the fact that this can shorten telomeres, it's really interesting. And I also wanted to touch on so you guys use yarrow. So I'm in Wisconsin and we have yarrow growing around. Now I've never used it, but I'm very interested in trying it out myself. But I went on a field trip with my son and it was like a nature field trip and they were explaining how the Native Americans in our area used yarrow all the time. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a natural blood clotting agent, correct?
Yep.
So
Yep.
So it's kind of fun because usually you would just put, let's say the common mom maybe would put some Neosporin and then a Band-Aid on. And what they used to do and what traditional medicine, what they would do is use yarrow and crunch it up. I don't really know, maybe muddle it up and put it on their skin and it would be like a natural coagulant. And so it would
Yep.
stop the bleeding. And so with your product, an anti-stringent, you're kind of preventing infection, correct? And then also helping that blood to clot and to heal faster.
Exactly. So when you have like yarrow, plantain, and calendula together, you increase oxygen to the wound site, you slow down the bleeding, and then you can speed up the healing with the skin repair properties that are with the calendula. And then, plantain can help take the sting and the itch out, which is often called nature's band-aid. And so yes, it's very much bringing forward those time-honored traditions. And I think today, a lot of the plant properties that people have been exposed to are plants that are just pieces and parts of the compounds because they've been exposed to high heat or different chemicals that have denatured it. And so, when you get that pure plant in that pure format and those beautiful, botanical compounds, that's when you really get to see the magic happen.
Yeah, that's a really great point because a lot of times, what we try to do with plants that work, let's say turmeric, for example, it's an anti-inflammatory, and there have been a lot of studies, of course, with the main component, the active component of curcumin. And so there are a lot of pills and supplements of curcumin. And so I- it's interesting because I know some of these things are very, they can be very helpful, but what we also don't fully I guess what we haven't fully studied is just the interaction of the entire plant on your body. And so when you say you're using the whole plant rather than just drying out and processing specific compounds, that just really interests me because I do think that there's a reason for the whole plant and there's a purpose. And especially when you can use these different plants and compounds and use it together for that diversity aspect is really important as well. And say, talking about more so plants and their medicinal properties, but also thinking more widely in terms of food in general. And instead of I'm gonna give an example here of like, we should be eating omega-3 rich fatty acids, and we can get that through whole food sources like salmon. Now there are supplements of omega-3s, but there's something to be said about receiving a lot of different nutrition from the one food. You're getting, of course, the protein, the omega-3s, the vitamin D, other vitamins and minerals and things. And so I like the idea of just kind of going back to that whole product, whole plant, whole food sort of idea and then combining it with others. And before I forget, I wanted to ask you, so you had mentioned sage. I grow sage in my garden. I more so use it for like culinary purposes, but curious what sage is doing in your salves.
We have a couple of different things. So, I mean, sage is a wonderful antioxidant and it is rich in skin repair components. Um, and it's good for inflammation as well. And so what's really interesting is we have it in our first aid formula, but we also have it in one of our deodorants. And I love that you talked about transdermal absorption. So your armpit is this really interesting tissue, right? Well, it absorbs about 70% of what you put in there. So, what we know today is why it's important to avoid aluminum and the various chemicals because it's next to our lymphatic tissue. And obviously, it absorbs a lot of it. But when we were creating our formulas, we're like, well, then let's also make this a nutritional resource. And so sage is in one of our formulas that goes very well with ginkgo biloba and clarity. And so we've got in our deodorants, functional mushrooms, ashwagandha, holy basil, ginkgo biloba, sage, vitamin C, and all of these like immune boosting properties, clarity properties, and also calming adaptogens because it's like, well, why not? If our armpit absorbs so much, let's give it the opportunity to bring more nutrition to our bodies. Because again, we talked about our skin being that giant organ and having that systemic transdermal absorption. And you also brought up inflammation. And one of the areas that I spend more time in for my own personal wellness journey is managing inflammation in a way that I can reduce how hard my body is working. So I'll take our pain relief formula that was originally designed to be for after workouts, post injuries. And I started just kind of intuitively using it where when I was traveling a whole lot, I would butter up from head to toe the night before traveling. And I would just put my bathrobe on, let my skin just drink it up. And what I had recognized is that when I stayed ahead of my inflammation before traveling, I recovered better because you're just not drinking as enough water. You're having, you've got your stress. You may not be eating as well. And so we'll do a thing on Sanctuary Sunday and we'll all just butter up and put our bathrobes on and manage inflammation in a way that you can also be as simple as avoiding certain foods or and so forth so that you can be more involved and more in tune with your body.
Oh my gosh, Sanctuary Sunday, that is genius. I love it. And you just butter up with your salves. How fun. Yeah, I actually make my own deodorant because the purpose of your body is absorbing so much. And it's funny, like the pitiful old armpit can actually have such a big impact on your health. Of course, we can go other detox pathways and participate in sauna and things like that to help detoxify. But at the same time, like you said, why would we, if we can kind of cut out one more way for our body to work harder, why wouldn't we do it? So yeah, I think having a natural deodorant is very, very important for your health. Lymphatic system, like there's so many purposes for trying to keep out the toxins and yeah, sunscreen. Do you guys have sunscreen?
We do.
Oh
We
my
do.
gosh.
And
Okay, tell me about that.
this was a tough one to because we have this idea that we're supposed to be able to go out in the sun for 10, 12 hours. And I'll even rewind. When I was pre-med, I was in my organic chemistry class and we were breaking down the oxybenzone ring. And I raised my hand and I said, "Isn't this a known carcinogen?" And he goes, "Yep." And I'm like, "Then why are we putting this on our skin?" He's like, "Well, it's the only ingredient that we know today, and people are marketing it that we don't get sunburn, but we know that it's still a carcinogen. And so, but we're getting the visible signs that we can just be out in the sun for 12 hours." And so creating a sunscreen was very interesting because especially in first aid, we have to make sure that we are performing just as well or if not better than the competitive product. But for sunscreen, we had to educate people that there's a lot of plants that have natural SPF in it, which is awesome, like calendula, coconut oil. There's a number of plants in there, and then, of course, you've got the zinc oxide. But then giving the disclaimer, "Guys, after a handful of hours, you need to reapply and cover up." So you can get some sun protection, but then changing the conversation that we were not meant to be in the sun for 12 hours,
Mhm.
has been an interesting journey. And, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually just talking it's at the time of this recording, it's like spring break time for a lot of families. And I was texting back and forth with my sister and she's like, "What sunscreen do you guys use?" And I'm like, and I'm telling her all these things to like not to be worried about, but we know that especially in Europe where they actually have higher standards and if it's not fully safe or if there's a little bit of data on it being a carcinogen, they don't allow it. And so I'm listing off and sharing with her the environmental working groups information on it. And she's just like, geez, like I didn't want to spend this much, but it's important for your family's health. And she has young kids, and it doesn't matter, I guess, the age of your kids, right? Like we want to make sure we're taking care of our skin. So I definitely want to look at your sunscreen line. I didn't realize you guys had that. So, yeah, I think it's so important, everything you said, just taking care of our skin. And then of just being wise, like don't stay out in the sun super long, cover up a little bit, even if it's just light linen materials or things. So, so interesting. It sounds like you guys have such a wide range of products. So, could you, I guess I'm gonna ask you one more question, then you can tell us where to find your products and stuff. One plant, what is one plant every mom should know if you had to pick? I'm sure there's so many, but if you had to pick.
I think it's the calendula. I would go back to it just because it's so versatile. It is for wound care, it's skin repair. You can use it for eczema, it's anti-aging. It's just so versatile and it's such a beautiful flower.
Mhm. I love that. And so where can people find you? Where can people learn more about what you're doing? Yeah, where do we find you?
greengoo.com, and you can also find me at Jodi A. Scott on LinkedIn. And please do email. I love curating a little form or variety of different products for you. So please don't ever hesitate.
Excellent. I love it. And anything new coming up? Any fun projects, things that you're excited about, or just maintaining?
We just acquired another brand called Fan Botanicals that's in our portfolio that we're really excited about. And this is a more high-end, high concentration of herbs. And I'm really excited to bring this brand forward and just a next level of skincare for folks that really want to do more or need more. And potent is all I can say.
Nice. We like potent, right?
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, your life wisdom too, and sharing your journey, your burnout journey with us. I think it really helps to hear from other women that we kind of, there's a point where we do struggle. We go through seasons and sharing how you can stay grounded and how you can stay well and, of course, use natural products. So, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope to talk to you soon. I have to ask you about that skincare. Thank you so much for being on the episode.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you love this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.